if you do all of those things, I think you can be whoever the fuck you want to be in like 18 months. Welcome back to Be the Standard. I'm here as your host, Denny Paul. I am here as always with my best friend and co-host, Mike Burns. So today we're going to be talking about something we haven't really discussed in too much depth on this show. We're going to talk about Afghanistan. We're going to talk about, what I consider to be probably our bonding, what kind of brought us together as friends and was working together and working for Mike. I was one of his team leaders. He was my squad leader, then platoon sergeant after that. So Mike and I have been working together, been friends for a number of years, but I really think, at least from my perspective and probably his as well, this is really where and how our friendship really got started.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, we're going to go through a lot of things as far as Afghanistan and, what it was like, specifically for us, right? We'll speak only to our experiences. As you know, we don't speak to things that we don't know or things we haven't experienced because, why would you? That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think the best place to start would probably be, I'm going to let you do this because I've done this on another podcast, or two other podcasts really, but I'm going to let you kind of explain to our viewers, like what was our mission over there? What were we even doing?
Yep.
And I'll let you kind of tell them and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to start what our mission was and what it was not. So us being our infantry battalion was broken up all over, Afghanistan, mainly eastern Afghanistan, some in southern Afghanistan, but mainly RC East, into platoons. So we were broken down in platoons to be security force for a provincial reconstruction team. And that came under whoever, what province you were in. There was some, Navy. I think was there an Air Force one? I don't know. An Air Force, couple PRTs, commanders.
Yes.
I think there was, and obviously some Army. But so security force for provincial reconstruction team that has, engineers, civil affairs, medical, and their job is to go around and provide services and see what, the people of the region need and provide those services. So, and we provide the security, we plan the missions, we get them there, we walk them around wherever they need to go, and we bring them back safely. That is our mission, and I think we did a great one. So
yeah, no, it was really cool because even though we were the security element, I would kind of felt like, at least with the civil affairs team, at least with the medical, staff that we had on our team that was out there with us, at least with like the agricultural teams and all of that, it really actually felt like we were trying to help, right? Because I know a lot of people look at it now and say, what did we really do? And all this money wasted and all this other shit. And a lot of that's fair. But at least from our perspective, and at least when we were over there, I kind of felt like we were trying to help in all those areas, right? Yeah. We'd go in the villages, there'd be kids all cut up or bruised or whatever, and we'd administer aid to them. We'd give them our MREs and food and different things, and try to figure out, educationally, what their needs were, agriculturally, what their needs were. So it actually felt like we were there trying to make an impact. How much of an impact we actually made, I don't know, but it, at least while we were there during that time, felt like, at least those teams and those people within our element were doing that.
Yeah, it's definitely an honorable mission. You can't say it wasn't. We're definitely in there in service of the Afghan people directly. We're trying to make their lives better, and provide services wherever they need there. So, did it long term? Did it make an impact? After the withdrawal, I doubt it. But all we can do is control what we did when we were there, and the rest is what it is. So, people can debate that for the rest of the time. We know what we did was honorable while we were there, and we did it the right way. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought overall it was a good mission. What we were doing, like I said, was noble in my opinion. For you personally, I'd like to hear, what was your favorite part? Like, what do you think the best part about, what it is we were doing, whether it's, the leadership, the guys, the whatever. What was the best part about being over there and doing that job?
The favorite part? That's a good question. There was a lot that was cool about it. A lot different than my previous deployment 2 years before that to Iraq. We were security force, but we were for the U.S. ambassador on that one. and just completely different environment, completely different mission set. Even though we're still a security force, but I gotta say the coolest part, I mean, just I guess because we had the leadership we did out there, and they let us do our job the way we saw it to be and the way we knew it should be, right? And obviously they had trust in us, like, but I feel like just talking to other PRTs, they were kind of micromanaged a little bit, and I don't think we were, and we're allowed to kind of do what we knew to do was right as far as security goes for them, and so I think that was pretty cool. And it just just you look at all there was just a lot of different missions. I mean that we did that were just outside the box kind of cool ones. Um, so I don't know. There was a lot of cool moments.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll come up. We'll probably hit them as we go through this.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think, and one of the things that, just to touch upon, and, Mike didn't really, he talked about the leadership we had out there. And I think it's important for us to call out. I mean, we were in the guard over there, doing that mission. And I think it's important for us to call out our leadership was, we had an O5 Navy SEAL as our PRT commander, and we had a E8 Navy SEAL as our PRT senior enlisted. So we had some incredible leadership, and for those guys, I think with the type of background that they had, and to show the trust in us that they did, and a lot of the coaching even that they did, I thought was just amazing. That the effort that they put into not only making us better, but then trusting us along the way, and kind of helping provide us the tools and the skill set to just keep getting better. So I thought that was really cool. And John Doolittle was our PRT commander, and he's actually going to be on next month. He's
cool.
coming into Boston for a speaking event. 27, 28 years in SEAL teams, I think he did. But he's retired now, speaking in Boston. He's going to be on the podcast next month, I think 26, 27, something like that. We're going to record. So I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, both those guys were phenomenal. I mean, they're definitely some of my favorite leaders of all time. I mean, I'm going on 27 years in the guard, still going, and yeah, they definitely rank up there with some of my favorite because just professionals. You know what I mean? Just outright professionals, no ego. I mean, you would think the Navy SEALs would have some egos. These guys definitely didn't. I'm sure there definitely was some, but not these guys. So yeah, and they treated us. They didn't look down on us. They didn't treat us differently. They were very professional, and definitely learned a lot from those two.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just in addition to the professionalism was the willingness to coach. And they almost treated you like an equal. And we knew we weren't equals, but they still, in my opinion, just treated us that way. And I thought it was really cool. And not just them, the guys that were there from SEAL Team 8 that we worked with, they were the same way. One of those guys came up to me after a mission, was like, "Hey man, I haven't been behind a 50 cal in months between training and being deployed." And he's like, "Do you mind getting up there with me and just kind of walking me through it?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah." And so I did that. But just the level of humility and the level of just like you said, professionalism, just working with those guys was awesome. So I was going to kind of put that as, kind of one of the highlights for me was being able to, as a guy in the National Guard, work with that caliber of, they call themselves operators.
Yeah.
Be able to work with that caliber of an operator and that caliber of just, a professional in that field was just really cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I got kind of lucky, though, because like my previous deployment to Iraq, I mean, we were working with Blackwater guys, and those guys were definitely, professionals of what they did and working with the State Department and doing that cool training. So have two deployments where I got to work with really good professional people was really cool. So yeah, definitely. But you gotta look at this just the things we did out there. You look back in hindsight, that was a cool mission. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not door kickers. We're not going after the enemy. But we're definitely doing a really cool mission out there, so yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. And that's one of the points I've made to a lot of guys that since we've started this that I've come across, and just kind of we didn't have a mission that was kinetic, right? We weren't out there looking for the bad guys, looking to go get after it and all that stuff. Some of that stuff found us, great, and we were able to do our job and move along. Great. And I think we wanted to do more of that stuff, but that just wasn't our mission.
Right.
But yeah, no, it definitely was a cool mission, a great time. Transitioning, what would you say was the most challenging part of it? whether it was like mission planning or whatever. What would you say the most challenging part about like just being away, being in that high stress environment? Like, what was the hardest part about it?
Mission planning was fun for me, actually. The only time there was one mission, I don't think, maybe you weren't aware of this, that Mondello, he came up to me, he's like, hey, you're going to be part of this. I forget what it was. So some ambassadors coming into town, and you gotta go to this brief. And it was like in 10 minutes. I'm like, all right, so I go to the brief, and come to find out that I was running the mission. Like, you have all these people from like different, agencies. Like, you got like the, the ambassadors protective detail, and everyone's there. They're looking to me for the mission. I'm like, I have no idea. So I had to throw it together real quick, brief it, or give like, all right, tomorrow I'll give you the notes. I was up all night planning this thing, like all night. And yeah, that was an interesting one. Mike, I still owe you for that one. Thanks, buddy. But difficulty, I mean, it's always tough being away from home, but once you're in the mindset, why I never came home on that deployment or the one before that. I was like, because once I'm in a mindset, I want to stay in that mindset. I don't want to break it, because I think that would be the toughest part. And maybe that is what was for you. It would be for me if I had to go home and go back, because you're home long enough to get your mindset back here. And
so basically what you're saying is, so they understand, you didn't take a leave during deployment.
No.
Right.
No, I didn't take leave, even though we're supposed to. I did the same thing in Iraq. I kind of kept putting it off to the end where I know it's going to get where people need to, they really need bodies.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I'll stay. And they don't send me. So I pretty much had to talk to commander, do a little, and be like, hey, sir, like this, it worked out. But yeah, I didn't take leave.
Yeah.
But difficulty, I know I'm scripting the question, Den. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think it was a cool mission. I don't feel like there's a lot of difficulty for me.
And to be fair, I think that's a fair answer, and the reason why is I think that especially after we got going and we got moving along throughout the deployment and throughout like going on mission after mission after mission, we kind of functioned like a well-oiled machine
It was good
after time, right? Like, people knew their jobs, people knew their roles. One of my favorite things that we did was, the way we prepared for missions and the way we gave our briefs, right? Like, you gave your piece, then I would give my piece on like security on the ground, and you piggyback off of that, and then the medic would get in there and talk about what happens in a firefight, somebody gets hurt. Then we'd have our comms guy, here's the call signals, here's our checkpoints, like all this stuff. So I felt like we were just very well organized in the way we prepared and the way, frankly, that we executed. And on top of that, I think we did a really good job adjusting on the fly on missions.
Yeah. So if you have the convoy commander or mission commander given the whole brief, that's not good, right?
Right.
You want to make sure that, for one, the people that whoever owns that part of the brief or that mission, they should be briefing it to ensure that they had their input in it, right? They understand it and they brief it, and they should brief their part. So I think that's just, if there's anytime there's a mission brief from one person just regurgitating stuff, that's not good.
Yeah, that's whoever decides that that's the idea, that's a failure in leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, I just liked, like I said, I just think it was like a well-oiled machine, and just people just knew their job and they did it well.
Yeah, our soldiers were outstanding. I got to say that. Like, we had a good platoon for sure, and it started back at training at Atterbury. You know what I mean? Like, getting ready there. I mean, the mission, Atterbury was tough because you're all over the place with the MOB requirements. But then we got together and we did training that we knew that we needed to do before we went over there. And when we got over there, I knew we had a good group of guys, good leadership. You have your onesie twosies, but for the most part, we had good, solid, platoon of people.
Yeah, I think if you take away just a little small piece of that mobilization period where, you have to conduct the training exactly this way to get your check mark in the box. And it's like, yeah, okay, we did that. Then we threw that shit out the window and went right back to our standard operating procedures.
Yeah, the pre-mob training we did was way better.
Yeah, well, we got to operate with our SOPs in place at the pre-mob, and they kind of let us run with that as long as like we really just hit our objectives. Yeah. But that at MOB, remember, we had to actually do every single thing.
Check the box.
Like, we had to drive the trucks the way they said. Like, it was fucking wild just how ridiculous it was.
Anybody that's deployed here before, especially in the Guard,
they know. Yeah,
you guys know. Mob is like you take a step back.
Yeah.
You definitely don't take a step forward.
You run through these lanes and then it's okay, back to throw that shit out the window and we're back to the way we've been training to do it. Because we know it works.
Yep.
So yeah, no, I actually, your answer wasn't bad. I actually agree with you, right? Like it's to say it was difficult, like the difficult comes from being away from home, right?
Right.
The difficult comes from, not having the people you love and care about there to fall back on and lean on every day, especially when you're having a hard day, because it is a high stress environment when you're in Afghanistan. And so when you don't have the people that are closest to you that you've been depending on for a certain period of time, that's the tough part about being away and being deployed in a combat zone.
Yeah.
But I always said that, it's got to be harder for the people back home, right? Because I always felt like, at least I have, my brothers. I got my family, my other family. They're just stuck back there worrying every day about what's going on with you. And at least you're doing a job that you're proud of, first of all. And then you got the guys next to you and the guys around you, and you really can depend on them in so many different ways. And that makes you feel just a particular level of just respect and caring for one another.
Yeah, and the big piggyback off that, I also tell soldiers every time that we deploy, it's like, listen, you got to remember, for you, this is something new. It's different. You know what I mean? Yeah. For them, like your spouses and your family members back home, their life just goes on the same, just without you. You know what I mean? Life is exactly the same, and that's hard for them. Like you're completely gone. For you, it's a new, exciting thing. No matter what it is, it's new inside. It's different. But also there comes the challenge when people try to come back home. Is you expect it. It's like almost going to a bad example, but I say this sometimes. Like going to prison for a year, jail for a year. You're out of the day-to-day life back here in America. Life goes on without you, and you come back only remember what it was like before you left, and then you have the difficulty trying. You want it to be that way, and they've done things without you. Say your spouse or whoever. You gotta kind of let them assimilate you back in, because you want to come back in and be the guy again, and it can't be that way because they did this for a year without you. You gotta ease back in. But that's probably a whole other topic. We could go down the rabbit hole, so I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on that one right now. But
no, not yet. But I was gonna get to the point at some point about how, like, we're not gonna get into it completely right now, but the hardest part of a deployment is when you get your ass back home.
Absolutely,
it was for me.
So let me change my answer. That would be the hardest part.
Gotcha.
Is definitely coming back home. As fun as that is and relieving as it is, the transition back to civilian life is the toughest.
100%.
Yep.
100%. Because when you're over there, like I said, you're just doing your job. You're doing something you're proud of, something that you know, and you're around people that you're literally placing like your trust and your beliefs in the guys around you, and you trust them 100%.
You have to.
Yeah, and that's just what it is. It's that brotherhood, and I saw Jocko Willink say this one time on one of his podcasts. It's like somebody asked him, like, what do you miss about combat? And his answer was, because the thing I miss the most is that when you're in combat, you're seeing the people around you function at their best. They're functioning at their highest level consistently. And they're doing so, not for themselves, not for these accolades. They're doing it for the guy next to them. And I got goosebumps just saying that, because there's so much truth to it. You have these guys that would literally just be like, fuck it. Like, I'm going to go down in a hail of gunfire for the guy next to me. And if that's what it takes. And you don't get that anywhere else. I think that's pretty cool.
It is, because you have to function at that, right? Otherwise people get killed. So,
yep.
And just as you were saying that, I was thinking about just some instances like where people had to be on and really be on. So I want to go back to this mission that we had. I'm sure you remember this one. We were planning to go to Karabakh, right? In the middle of the night, they got changed to going down to Makur or Golan, actually even all the way down to Golan. In the middle of the night, do a mission we did not plan to do because those Navy SEALs got stranded out there.
Yep.
Was it Navy SEALs, Special Forces? Special Forces. There's two. First, the Navy SEAls.
SEAls.
SEALs got
they got blown up, didn't they?
No. So their vehicles broke down.
That's what
it
was.
They got ambushed.
Yeah.
So then the QRF launch dropped them off, right? That's where the special forces guys were. But then that truck got blown up trying to get them out.
That's what it was.
So
I knew there was some truck that got blown up.
yeah, so that was our mission to go down there and recover the truck or blow it up.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I remember Finney, and I got to give him a lot of credit for this because our MATV didn't have any it didn't have blackout drive. It didn't have anything for you to use your nods on, so any lights to be on night vision. So he had to take his PEC and just move it like this.
Oh, really?
The entire time looking for those blast holes, and we would just find the blast hole right before we drove into it. So you want to talk about a couple hours?
Oh,
A couple hours to get down there
to stay alert like
to
that.
Stay alert.
That's...
He was on. So when you said being on, I was like, yes, because I give him all the credit, man. He had to be on his A game and that driver because it was like last minute. Hey, stop. Yeah. Left, because those blast holes were huge.
Yeah.
You drive on one of those, it's over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he did an amazing job that night, just scanning the road with this PEC. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So it's just funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking that I was like, man, he must have been mentally exhausted after
of course.
that.
Oh yeah,
because that was crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
And I can think of just so many times just feeling mentally exhausted over there on a mission because you're on such high alert just everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Whether you're in the truck and you're just looking for something that could blow you up, or if you're out roaming a village thinking like, okay, where could a sniper be? I was never worried about like what was in the village, if we were going to get like ambushed or whatever. But for me, it was always like, where could there be a fucking sniper? That's what I was always like looking for, right? Because those motherfuckers can reach out and touch you from a lot further away.
Yeah.
And so that's where my concern always was, because you know how it is, like a sniper takes a shot and that's what initiates an assault, an ambush, So yeah, that's the stuff I used to look for. And I was always on alert, just fucking looking everywhere. But I can remember just my brain being tired from doing that.
Yeah. But your brain should always be doing that. It should always be looking
for
the
it has
threat
to be.
Always assessing and reassessing. I mean, that's usually kind of what, my job was when we got into place, right? Mondella would set in the original security, and then I would adjust it the whole time he's in his KLE. You know what I mean? Constantly moving people around, constantly making sure they knew who was to the left and right and where anybody might come attack us from. And if they do, what do we do? You know what I mean? Because you sit there for hours and nothing ever happens. But when it does happen, you better be ready.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of just got me thinking about like what maybe one of my most frustrating times was, right? It was early on in the deployment, so it wasn't a huge deal, and it wasn't like we were in the most dangerous of areas, but like you just said, you're constantly adjusting security, right? Mm-hmm. So I had my team on the ground. We're moving through, I think, one of the markets. Stop, pull security, and one of the guys, I'm not gonna, obviously would never say his name, stops to pull security. I'm like, okay, but he stops like fucking 10 feet short of an alley. So I'm like, hey, bud, you push up, cover that alley. So we're okay. We start moving through the village, right? We end up going like behind one of the markets or whatever, one of the stores.
Yeah.
So we're behind it, and so we're pulling security back there. There's a hill right here, like a little mound of dirt. He stands behind it. I'm like, hey, bud, jump on that. Pull security on the other side of that. Like, right? Like, you need to push it out. So, like, but you got to be like, and that was one of the things that, like, so this guy, for the record, never was on the ground again. He became my driver. Took another guy, put him on the ground as a dismount with me.
I was gonna ask you later who it was. I got it.
You can ask me later. You know who it is. Ended up being a phenomenal driver, by the way. That was his fucking thing.
Yeah.
He ended up being a great fucking driver. So good.
Everyone has their thing.
But yeah, I just remember that being like early on one of the frustrating things, and of course, like me, my first deployment as in a leadership position in a combat zone. Mm-hmm. And just being like, dude, come on, you got to be able to think on the ground. If there's one place you need to be able to think,
absolutely, it's
when you're on the ground, you're moving. You have to have that situational awareness and know exactly where guys need to be and what security should look like.
Yeah,
and so that was frustrating.
And you had to be physically fit, right? We talked about this in a previous episode, but that's what caused us to do that. The stress test. The stress course, because we're in a dismounted firefight, and I remember people were just smoked. People were just walking; they just couldn't do it. And I'm not talking about mainly our guys; it's mainly the Polish people we're with. Yeah. Watching some of them do it, but even some of our guys they were pretty beat up and smoked. I was like, all right, we got to make sure that we have the right people on the ground with us because, in that circumstance, we had no trucks. We had no one to cover us. It was just us.
Yeah.
And I was like, it became abundantly clear. I was like, we need to make sure we got the right guys on the ground. That kind of worked its way out anyways, but this was an easy way to do it. Like, hey, if you ranked in this top bunch, you could be a dismount. But if you didn't, hey, you could be a driver or gunner, just everybody has their role there. So, yeah. You can't be a liability if you can't think on your feet and when you're moving, dismounted.
Yeah, not to stray too far. That's why I'm so hard on like law enforcement and firefighters. You can't be a liability. Like why the fuck are some of these guys not in shape? It drives me crazy. You're in that one of those professions, and so you get it. But I'm openly tough on firefighters and police officers and the fact that they need to be in fucking shape.
Yeah.
And soldiers, same exact thing. They need to be in fucking shape because it's in those jobs and in those moments where if you become a liability, you're not only a liability for yourself, you're a liability for everybody around
That's
you.
part of your duty description. Like, 100%. That going in, you know what I mean? Like, you owe it to an employer. If any job was to hire you for a certain thing, like, that is part of it. And you're expected to maintain that level, at least a bare minimum, the level they hire you at,
right.
And most people regress below that, which is not the way.
Well, at least in the military, they have, they'll have guys on remedial PT or plans or whatever. If you don't pass at a certain point, they throw your ass out. There's no union to protect you in the military. It's like,
true.
If you don't meet the standard, they have the power to just be like, all right, you're fat ass now.
Yeah.
Thanks for losing the weight to come and let us use you for a few years.
Yeah.
Now you can get the fuck out because you're too fat. But you can't do that. The police, look at some of these police officers.
Yeah.
Look at some of these firefighters.
Well, I know.
And you can't get rid. These are guys that would have done anything to get those jobs. They had to work so hard with the tests, the academics, just being good people and passing these background checks. Like all these things, you do all that to get those jobs, and then you just let yourself become a slob.
Mm-hmm.
There's no excuse for it.
Yeah.
Unless there's an injury and it's a nagging injury and you can prove hey, I've been trying or whatever. I don't want to put everybody in a box, but at some point, you're going to get in that box because you're just fat and lazy and there's no excuse for it.
We definitely got off topic there.
Yeah, we did. We're going to go back to, all right, we're going back to Afghanistan.
Yeah, back to Afghanistan. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about, our mission. We talked about other things. What about, what for you was, what would you call a low light of your time there? Whether it's, I don't know, difficult conversation with a soldier or a difficult experience combat wise, whatever. Doesn't really matter.
I think it's just got to be all the ramp ceremonies that we had there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Soldiers we never met, but we operated with off the fob. I mean, I don't even know how many it was. It was a lot.
17.
Was that many?
17 there were I don't know, maybe 11 ramp ceremonies, 10 or 11 ramp ceremonies for 17 people.
Yeah.
For the times I was there, not including when I was on leave, because I know there was one or two when I was on leave, because I remember we were texting during one of them, or before one of them.
Yeah, it wouldn't be on text.
He wouldn't have been texting me during. Yeah. But when I was on leave and you were back there was, I don't know what it was, but I know there was a ramp ceremony because we were talking about it.
Yeah.
But I know myself, I went to either 10 or 11 for 17 different people, because I remember one of those days, 4 people got killed.
Mm-hmm.
And these were route clearance guys that their job, just drive around, go looking for fucking bombs to clear roads that we need to drive on.
Yeah.
That shit fucked with me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'd say, the ramp ceremonies weren't the toughest for me, but they were fucking, it's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. And not to keep, talking about Jocko or anything, but he had a really good Memorial Day post where he said, we're grateful for them because we know they took our place. And that was the first thing I thought of, was the guys driving out there looking for bombs to clear the roads that we're going to drive on. Right?
Yeah.
And so they're trying to make the road safe for us, and then they lose 4 guys.
Yeah.
That stings,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say that would be the low light. I mean, those were never fun. Those always sucked. You always try to do the best you could to honor them, on their way out. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot. I mean, our fob wasn't that big and we had that many.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know the number until you said it, but
I just know my number, right? And the crazy part is that was more.
yeah,
You know,
I'm
I
pretty
just
sure
know
there's more,
17 people, and there was one time it was 4 people, there was another time it was 3 people,
Yeah.
and then it was a bunch of singles.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that he was the lead, I don't know if he was the lead, not the lead, but he was the TC in one of the vehicles, the E6. He had 6 kids. 6 fucking kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that shit, I remember hearing that and just breaking down, being like, fuck.
Yeah.
Married with 6 kids, and his wife's going to get a check for $500,000.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
Yeah. I think at the time was it 400,000, right? Was it 500?
400, then you got plus, there was plus 100,000 for something. So it was, I think it was like 500,000, unless you took out additional, which hopefully he did. But I just remember that was the first thing I thought about. I'm like, Jesus Christ, you know, whatever he has for life insurance is not going to be enough. 6 fucking kids, man, that sucks. That crushed me, that particular ramp ceremony, because it was the same one where it was 4 guys.
Mm-hmm.
That was a tough day.
What was your favorite mission out there?
My favorite mission?
You had to have a favorite.
Oh yeah, no, I do. I think my favorite mission out there was the one where we did it was one of the ones we were out there for like 3 days, 4 days, whatever it was. And we were just going from village to village, sleeping village to village, you know, with the people, being kind of men of the people, and playing with the kids, right? There was one village we went to in particular where you kind of take all your shit off, relax. The kids were, you know, hanging out with you. They were awesome. It was the same one. That was the same mission where we had the fuel drop.
Oh, so that was
chasing
cool.
those goddamn.
So that was like my R&R.
Yeah.
Right. Once you got the other side of that, it was pretty safe and permissive up there.
Yeah, that's what I was talking. That's where all the kids were that I thought were just so cool. And I have a picture because remember it rained.
Oh yeah.
It was fucking raining. It was all muddy and shit.
That. I was so pissed.
Yeah. But it was raining, but then I remember being so fucking miserable and then just having like 30 kids just run up to me. And I have a picture of it, of just me and, you know, a bunch of kids around me. And I picked up one of the kids. He's on my shoulders.
Yeah.
They loved it. And they would just, all they wanted was their picture taken. And
all right. So I'll go back to that was my worst day. That was horrible. I mean, that was just so frustrating in the fact... It wasn't my worst.
The fuel drop was
people getting killed are way worse. So let's go with just frustration.
The fuel drop was frustrating.
Frustrating with what was more frustrating, and if you ever see this, I don't care. Is that so we're gonna give some content. We're gonna go story time on this. We have to. Okay. So Commander Doolittle, he wanted the parachutes from the drops from the oil drums.
Yep.
Right. He was expecting them to be like we all had common sense, probably the nice ones, right? These were not the nice ones. And the mission commander, won't say his name, everyone knows who it was, for that mission. He's the mission commander, not the convoy commander. So we know, like, you had the mission commander, overall mission commander, and Mondello, our buddy Mike, he was the, in charge of the Sec 4. Anyways, so we get there, they miss the drop. They're scattered all over. They're hitting people's farmlands. People are pissed. And we have these huge trucks. All we have is this little 4x4, long 4x4. We had to roll these. I would love to know how heavy those were. And they had to roll them up this thing. Anyways, these guys are like, hey, listen, we'll do all this for you if you give us your parachutes. And this guy was like, no effing way. Like the commander wants these parachutes. And he was fighting Mike on this the whole time, and I'm losing my mind. I'm like, if he just says yes, these guys are literally going to grab all these oil drums for us and load them for us.
Yeah.
So that's when you see that picture. I have a picture. We should probably link it to this. When you see me standing out there just drenched, cold, I'm just like, this is miserable. And it could have went a different way because these guys would have done all the work for us. But this guy was adamant about like, no.
Couldn't even negotiate. I wasn't part of that. I remember you guys arguing about it.
He was not having it at all. Yeah. Nope, not even having it at all. And the commander, as we knew, didn't want those parachutes. Doolittle did not take them. They were the gross ones. Like they're not.
Yeah.
He's gonna hang them up in Big Daddy's. You know what I mean? Like have it like nice decor. So, anyways, that I was even though that was a really fun mission later.
Yeah.
That day sucked.
Yeah.
And when we got turned around later, actually that sucked too. I don't know if you remember that.
What happened?
So.
Was that when we went
in a big circle?
Was that because we were trying to avoid an ambush or no?
No.
Why did we go in a big circle?
I don't know. However, the route was planned.
I'm glad I don't remember it because it sounds frustrating.
No, it was very. You don't remember?
I
We were out, so we took this hardest route. Almost rolled the truck over.
Is that the one where we went down that side of that cliff?
What do you mean?
There was
I don't think so.
no. Okay.
But we almost rolled the truck over. Right? Took this weirdest route ever, and then looked at it the next day and saw we got to take a straight road. Oh, on our way back, we saw that like this road comes. We had to go straight back to the district center that we stayed at. We weren't supposed to stay there. We were supposed to go somewhere else and stay there. But because we got so like took this weirdest route ever on the planet Earth, and to come back and we're like, it's a straight road. Like whoever did the lead nav on that, it doesn't matter. It's done. It's over. But that was frustrating as well. But that was a cool mission because you could kind of take your body armor off. You could go in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
That's funny. No, I'm glad I don't remember it because again, it sounds.
Denny, it's gonna come back to you. Like you never. How can you not remember that? It was like we spent a whole day driving around and got nowhere.
Yeah.
Like the entire day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure Mike Mondell, I hope you watch this. He'll remember this. Yeah. And anyone else part of that will probably remember it. That was a good one. That was good story time. But yeah, that was probably my most frustrating day. Like, not gonna lie to you, when it came to those, because those people, they were pissed at us. We could have made good relations with them. Like, hey, we just want the parachutes. We'll everything is forgiven.
Yeah.
And we will do more. We'll actually load these up for you. We're like, sweet. Like me and Mike thought for sure this is a no brainer. Nope.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's. I feel like you just can't avoid that shit. Like eventually,
well, it's the point. I mean, if that's the worst thing, if that's the worst thing that happens, come on.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. We didn't lose anybody, so
yeah, exactly. Like that. Yeah, that type of shit just happens. That's just like, okay, adapt, adjust, and move on. But yeah, it doesn't make it less frustrating, but it definitely sucks. Yeah, I didn't ever find like that stuff all that difficult like to deal with, like that kind of shit. It was funny. Well, the funnier part of me is like the other stuff kind of got to me, like when I was like a new leader. I was kind of hard on my guys, right? Like in the beginning anyways. I loosened up as time got on, but just like I was like anal about shit in the beginning about like their equipment, like bring me all your shit. I want to make sure it all has fresh batteries. I want to make sure your fucking weapon's good to go. Like, not that you shouldn't check those things occasionally, but I never wanted to come across as like a babysitter or like these are grown men you're dealing with, and for the most part, you should be able to treat them that way. And there's certain things, and I always carried extra batteries. We were never going to be in a position where like, you know what I mean. But
I mean, you can say that now, but you probably look back, as much as they hated you for it, it matters. You know what I mean? Because then I guarantee they're never going to forget it. They're never going to forget to bring their batteries or do all that stuff.
One of them. There was one time at night we were driving somewhere. One of my driver just his nods. His batteries were dead, and I'm like, why are they dead? Why? Just tell me why. It's like I didn't change them out before the mission. I'm like, why not? It's like, I don't know, I just didn't. I'm like, okay, well, I have batteries, so here's your batteries. And I gave them to him and chewed his ass out and whatever. It wasn't, it ended up not being a big deal, but just lesson learned, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lesson learned. Yeah, I was new at it, right? Like being a leader for the first time, and then being in charge of guys. Some of them have been in the Army longer than me, right? But I kind of made that my focus for a long time and got the points and got promoted ahead of a lot of guys because of just going to the schools and having college and, trying to get as many points as I could and excelling in PT and all that shit so that I could get promoted earlier. So, but it was challenging for me. And that was one of my bigger challenges, was being a new NCO right before a deployment and being an NCO on a deployment. Yeah. And again, leading guys who had deployed before. Like some of these guys had deployments and I hadn't had any, and I'm in charge of them. So it was a learning curve for sure, but I think eventually I hit my stride and did well with it. It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my first combat deployment, again, being in Iraq. I was definitely over the top, was very, And I think this is why, and I don't think it's such a bad thing. In my mind, I was like, I don't know what I don't know. I'm going to prepare myself to be the best leader that I can. I want to learn as much as I can about the TTPs we have, the TTPs the enemies have, or sorry, tactics, techniques, and procedures. What the enemy's doing, what the best we can do to counter that, and just operating environment we're going into. And you're very strict because you should take it seriously. When I was a squad leader in Iraq, I was like, I'm responsible because those missions were squad level only. So I was like, I'm responsible for this squad of 15 people, and I was very strict. I was over the top, but eventually once you learn, you learn to calm down. You dial it back. But in the beginning, being an experienced leader, you don't know. You know what I mean? Right. So you just like, I'm doing this for the benefit of the team and for them, because you want to get them all back safely. So I don't think being a little, over careful. I mean, or not over careful. That's not the right word. Being a hard ass is such a bad thing because because it's life and death. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you want to make sure that everyone's got their head wired on tight and they're going to get home safe.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
You can earn the right to do the big boy rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you get to that point, then you get to that point. But in the beginning, you're not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when my guy made that mistake, it was early on. So it got to the point where, again, lesson learned. He learned his lesson, and, shit happens. Shit happens.
It does.
And it wasn't one of those things where it's like, it's not like we didn't have a solution and we were fucked. It was like, okay, I have fucking batteries, so it's done. It's fine. But no, I enjoyed that deployment. And for some people, just like to give it some context, right? Ghazni Province, where we were, was eastern Afghanistan. I think we're only a few hours from Pakistan. If you look at it on a map, it's not far from Pakistan, for probably 3-4 hours. But I enjoyed it.
So let's go to, just for the audience, I guess people never deployed before, or even in this province. What was your first impression of the country when you got there? Like the smells, the culture, everything.
I thought the place was beautiful.
The smells?
No, I mean,
it smelled horrible.
It didn't smell great, but it was beautiful aesthetically, I think.
Yeah. Well, I guess what?
Everywhere we went, I mean, you're driving through and all you see is mountains. I mean, it's like, I've gone to parts of Denver and I've been like, fuck, this is what Afghanistan looks like in some parts, right? Not obviously everywhere. I mean, when you're driving through a market in Afghanistan, there's fucking sewer water right there and it smells like shit. Like, that's not great.
Yeah.
But, I think overall, it's a beautiful country. And I've said it 1,000 times. Like, I'd love to go back there at some point, someday, exactly where we were, just to see what it's like. Because, some of those parts of Ghazni where we were beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
some of the history there.
The history. You got the minarets that are out there.
So there's some history there where we were, and some beautiful spots. I think it was Mondello texted me a picture of something the other day. Did he send that to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so just to be able to go back there maybe someday when it's safe would be fucking cool.
Yeah. That's just like some of our guys that are in Baghdad right now. I'm just like, I would love to know what that looks like right now.
Sure.
Just because I was there, it was 07, 08. You know what I mean? They are just completely different.
What was that with the surge? 07.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was completely, with the T-walls down, like, just nothing like it used to look, right? Route Iris is like permissive. It was one of the worst routes in the whole country.
Like ever.
Yeah. Anyways, but so, yeah, to do that with Afghanistan, Ghazni would be cool. But I don't know if it'll ever be what we call quote unquote safe.
Yeah.
But, maybe good enough we can go check it out.
Oh, man, if we can ever do that, that'd be great. Like, they just did it on D-Day. They did a 80th anniversary of D-Day in Germany. Like, they went to Omaha Beach and they went to all these places of, where they were and where they fought. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, holy shit. Yeah. For us to go back to Afghanistan and go to fucking Wagez and see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Places where we got into it. And it would just be weird. Right? Like, I can't imagine what it must feel like for some of those older guys that were there to be like, fuck, like, I remember when I was getting shot at from that hill or was shooting at that hill or, I mean, I'm sure it looks different now, but generally speaking, it probably felt, there's got to be so much emotion tied to that.
For those guys,
I can't imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. I mean, I'll take away from those drivers out there, man. I've never seen. We got to try to find some pictures and videos of the way people used to drive out there. Like
Oh
you'd
yeah.
have a bus with like a bunch of stuff stacked on top of that, with cars stacked on top of that, and people on top of that, and these buses just flying down the
Yeah.
only paved highway there was, and going critical angle to avoid blast holes, and almost rolling over, and everyone just could give a shit. They're just
Yeah.
like, huh, inshallah. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
unbelievable. So that's, the only time I think I've seen crazier drivers was in Guatemala. Those people are pretty nuts too.
Really?
Yeah, they're pretty nuts. But I've
I feel
never
like
seen anyone.
everywhere is nuts. Jamaica, they were nuts. Mexico, they were nuts.
Yeah.
Italy, they're fucking
But
psychotic.
did you ever see people like they did in Afghanistan stack stuff up the way they did? I've never seen that anyway.
No,
That's insane.
only there.
I was like, you want to talk about they're not making a second trip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're going to get all in one trip.
Oh yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. It reminds me of like when I was doing farm shit, and when I was growing up, we'd stack the trailer with hay, the truck with hay.
Yeah.
We'd be like, fuck, we only have like 10 more bales of hay. Let's see if we can throw them on there. And it's like, yeah, that's not safe, but fuck it.
Definitely.
We're not going that far,
These
right?
things were not safe at all. They were crazy.
Yeah.
But it kind of showed their mentality out there, right?
Mm.
Like literally, Inshallah was literally their mentality. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen, God willing, So, yep. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the funny things that I think about, I tell this story sometimes, is when we were there, and I'm a UConn basketball fan. I grew up in Connecticut, whatever. And when we were there in 2010, they won the national championship. And I remember being like, I hadn't followed any of it, and I typically would have, but I hadn't followed any of the UConn Huskies stuff all year because we were gone. And I'm walking through the White House, which was the main building on our fob. And I look down and there's a Sports Illustrated and it says UConn wins or whatever the fucking headline was. And I'm like, huh, UConn won the national championship. That's awesome.
Yep.
And it just made me think of it because UConn just won it again this year. So, but yeah, no, it's just, you think about it and you're like, fuck, like there really is a whole life going on back home.
Yep.
Your sports teams are still playing, your friends are still hanging out without you. Like everything's still happening. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it was just funny to think about, funny to walk by that and be like, okay.
So this kind of reminded me of this instance, because we were out there when they killed Osama bin Laden, and everyone back home knew about it before we did, even though we're only a couple hours away, right? Like we're literally sleeping. They did it through the night, and I have people like text what was the messenger that we had?
BlackBerry Messenger.
Yeah, they're like, or like maybe it was Facebook. I don't know what it was, and they were like, "Yeah, you got that guy." Blah blah blah, like all this stuff. I'm like, what? What happened?
Yeah, I woke up to text messages too.
Yeah, that's when people were just like going nuts that they killed Osama bin Laden, and you're like, huh, no kidding. And just to know they just launched out of a province just right next to, like pretty close to ours, not next to ours, but to go get them. It was pretty cool. But we slept through the night when that whole thing happened, and everyone back home knew about it before we did.
It's still cool that we were there when that happened.
Oh, very cool. Oh, you kidding me? Don't care.
Yeah.
Very cool. It had nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it. But just being there when they fucking flew his ass back in fucking Afghanistan.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Afghanistan was fun, man. I like fun, right? Good, bad, and different. I really enjoyed it.
It's an experience. You can't take that away.
And now we can hit on the hardest part, which was coming home.
Okay.
That was the hardest part.
Yeah.
Because like you said, life goes on for the people that are home. You're there with your friends, your brothers, and I think it's easier for us than it is for them. In the sense of, like I said, they're just worried about what's going on with you. You still have the distractions of your work. You have the distractions of your friends. You're still missing everything back home like crazy, of course. But just generally speaking, I just think that it's harder on the people back home that are thinking about you and wondering about you.
Well, it's the unknown, right? Like if I couldn't imagine what the reverse would be like if I had my wife or whatever deployed overseas and I had no idea what the heck was going on at any given time. You know what I mean? Because one thing people understand when you're back here, people like you tell them the stuff that happens over there, and it's super weird. Even now, if you talk about it, it's weird. Like having rockets shot at you, or having people shoot at you, or things getting blown up. back here, you say that, it's weird. Over there, it's not weird. You know what I mean? It's just kind of what you expect. But you come back here, and those things were just like, it's bonkers to people. And even would be to us because we just don't do it anymore. Like if somebody were to rocket this house, it'd be a big deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, if someone were to rocket your building, in Afghanistan, not that big a deal.
Like it's, and it's funny because like people, like we could have conversations about like shit that happened overseas, and people would just be like, how can they talk about that? Like they're talking about it like it's normal, and it's like you just said, like it is normal there.
It is normal. You
here,
have that expectation.
Yeah, like the average person doesn't have a clue what that's like or what that experience looks like. But yeah, the readjustment period for me was definitely the toughest part about the deployment, right? Coming home, readjusting. And I've talked about this before. I'm not going to get in the weeds again on it, but things are different. I was different. I had flipped that switch, and coming back home to try to be normal again and flip that switch back. That fucking dial was just locked in. There was no moving it.
Yeah.
I had to work extremely hard and go get help and talk to somebody and really just do the things that I needed to do in order to get that dial to move a little bit back to normal. And it still took years and years and years of effort and again, just doing the work and trying to get back to that sense of normalcy and just being that guy who's not functioning in a high stress environment anymore.
Yeah. And that's it. Like really the high stress environment part of it, like is turning that off and being okay with things not being like they don't have to be like so strict and everything has to be a certain way. Over there, things have to be a certain way or people get killed. That's just the way it is. Like it's very strict and you have that level of expectation. We talked about it earlier. Back home, you got to let that go a little bit. You know what I mean? A lot of it, not a little bit. And it's hard to let that go and it's hard to actually relax and enjoy things. Like if you think back to just anything, like at first it's like almost like anything. When you first come back and it's like, yeah, you're home, blah, blah, blah. When all that's over, that's when it begins. You know what I mean? Everyone's happy to see you. Everyone's like high-fiving you and like you have like your welcome home party. And then once that party's over, it's just now it's you back home in your old life. It's not your old life. Exactly. Life's moved on without you. You got to figure out how you fit into that life now. And a lot of people struggle with that. And I know both my combat deployments, even the non-combat deployment before that, you still got to figure it out. And there's a lot of stress there. And there's a lot of again, hypersensitivity. That's not the word I'm looking for. You get angry very easy. What am I looking for? What's the word? You're just always on edge. Like things set you off really, really easily. You know what I mean? And for me, it only lasts a couple months. Thank God my ex, I don't know how she did it. I wouldn't be able to deal with it. You know what I mean? But it takes a while to process and go through that stuff. And some people never do, ever.
Yeah,
it sucks.
And I think that was my issue, right? Like you just said it. Like you get home and there's like this 4 to 6 week period where everybody's excited to see you. You're having drinks every day. You're relaxing because you're still getting paid from the military, so there's no rush to like go work or do anything like that. So you get used to this feeling of like, oh, everybody's happy to see me. This is awesome, right? And then that starts to fade away because, as it should, right?
Yeah.
You're home now. Like,
you're home now. Get on with life.
Exactly. But the problem is life doesn't pick up where it left off. It just
At all.
So then you're not feeling the same way. You're not getting that love and, oh, I missed you. It's great to see you again and all this stuff. You're not getting that anymore. So then you start to chase, or I started to chase like just any feeling of normalcy, right?
Yeah.
And the only time I could feel normal or feel happy or feel anything was when I was drinking. So that's why, like I said it before, 6-8 months I drank every day after the deployment.
Yeah.
Because I was chasing just a feeling of either acceptance or love or whatever, or high of happiness, and just wasn't getting it at all. And so booze would make me feel something at least for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Or it would let me escape something for a couple
I think
hours.
it's more, I think escape would probably be the better word. I'm not going to speak for you, but I think that's usually what, people tend to do. You know what I mean? And that's why I think I learned from my first deployment. Definitely, I told my nephew, who just got back from overseas a couple months ago, and he didn't listen to me, but I was like, listen, come back for 2 weeks, enjoy it, have fun, decompress, but then get back to work. The longer you stay away from life it's harder to pick it back up again. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
was like, get back to work, get back to doing something that you know that's familiar. Well, was familiar. You might, that might not be good advice for everybody. Let me backtrack because maybe people need more time, need more help. You know what I mean? For me, that was what worked well for me. So I'm gonna say what worked well for me is I think I took like 2 weeks off, maybe three. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't a long time. The second combat deployment, and I was like, all right, I'm going back to work. You know what I mean? I'm gonna double dip. Still get paid from the military and get paid from there and get back to what I knew. Try to catch up as fast as I can. You know what I mean? Because the more time you sit back and reflect on how much things are different and how much you know. Uh, I think it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of sadness. You know.
Yeah, and I think if I was going back, like, because at that point, when I came back, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Right, I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't
Right.
have a job waiting for
I
me.
did right,
So I was in that position of like that holding pad of like I had two shoulder
and
surgeries
that
within
didn't help.
7 months.
Remember that.
Right, so I was getting these surgeries,
Mm-hmm.
feeling like just mentally exhausted from the deployment and readjusting and arguing and trying to
Yeah,
readjust and coexist with another person. That's not easy. Because now you're infiltrating their life that they've been living for the last year without you.
and that's the
So
biggest thing.
that's hard.
Yes.
That's wicked hard. And so that was tough. And then not knowing my next career move, having two shoulder surgeries, constantly like shoulder surgery, then PT, then recovery, and whatever. Okay, that shoulder surgery didn't take. We didn't shave enough off the bone. You going back on there, right? So it was that was a tough 12 to 18 months for
That
me.
makes a lot of sense.
Just with everything, like physically,
Mm.
mentally, emotionally. Um,
Yeah, if I didn't have that
yeah.
thing, like I had a job right back to the fire department, so
And if
something that was familiar. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So it was easier. I couldn't imagine because I forgot. I did forget that you had, you tore your shoulders up pretty bad over there and had to get surgery. So you're dealing with that. You don't really have your career set yet. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's tough. That's a tough
yeah, I
position to
just
be
kind
in.
of felt like
I
my
can see.
life was on hold
Mm,
and didn't really have a clue what was happening next. And
yeah.
so I knew if I drank, I could forget about it. So that's what I did.
So I feel like, and I'm not going to
And
speak
then
for
just
them.
mentally, and some of the stuff, as you know, did affect me from being over there. Like
Yeah.
some of the stuff I saw and did, like it affected me. So I did feel like I was drinking for that reason,
Hmm.
and for all those other reasons. And you compound all those stressful
Mm.
emotions and all those stressful scenarios into just whatever period of time, that shit will beat you down.
So let me ask you this question because I'm just curious, and you probably don't have an answer, not a psychologist, but I actually just thought about it because we're actually unpacking this a little bit. Do
Mhm.
you think those things would have affected you as badly if you didn't have so much time to dwell on them? Like if you got say you had a job, you came back to.
Probably not.
There's no way to answer this honestly, but you don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
The what if, but I'm just curious because you had a lot of time to stew and dwell on those things that happened to you. You know.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like you said, I can't say for sure. I think that if there's one thing I've always been half decent at, it's pushing shit aside. So I think I would have at least at a minimum been able to push it aside for a while, but I also know myself and it wouldn't have been gone forever no matter what. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So I don't mean pushing aside. So I feel like I'm probably wording this badly. So I feel like when you get back to what you know to be normal, some kind of normal life, it helps you work through it. Like you should
No.
never push it to the side. That's never a good technique.
But
You know
I
what I
think
mean?
that's I think that's what I would have done.
Gotcha.
If I came back to
Sorry.
like you did, like with the job waiting and
Hmm.
more of something concrete,
Yeah.
I think I probably would have just pushed it aside
Yep.
because I do know how to do that.
Yeah.
I don't really I don't do it anymore.
I used to be a master of that too. Oh, me too.
Yeah, I
Oh, yeah.
don't do it anymore, but I used to be, like you said, a master at that.
That's
Of just pushing
that's
shit
how
to
we're
the
brought
side.
up, right?
Yeah.
Men were taught like, oh,
Mhm.
fucking
Mhm.
suck it up, push it down, don't ever let it come back up again.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. But that's what I think I would have done, and it only would have been a matter of time before it came and bit me in the ass, anyways. And yeah, but yeah, that's definitely, we've gone through deployment, best part, worst part, the hardest part, which coming home, adjusting. Anything else you want to touch on?
No, I think we hit the highlights. Again, just want to tell our, especially people we might have deployed with or other vets that would like, who want to hear specific questions and like topics on this. I would love you guys to, send Denny and I a message or respond to wherever you see this. we'd love to really dive into what you guys think is important and what we've kind of done. We just kind of go over the wave tops on our experiences, but we can definitely go down the rabbit hole of certain things if you guys want to know. But no, I think we did a good job hitting. That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, no, that was good because like I said in the beginning, that's where, our friendship really forged, in my
Right.
opinion. Like we knew each other prior to that. We had worked together.
Mm-hmm.
Since right when you got back from Iraq, I started working for you. So I worked for you for a little bit before we went overseas. So
But it's a lot different once you
it's
deploy
way
together.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way different. That's where we became friends.
Yeah, I agree.
Even though I was working for you and I still had to respect you and do everything you said and all that stuff, and I always did my best to do that. But yeah, I think that's where it all began, and I think going through that experience is what has made our friendship so special and last so long. So
Yeah.
I just wanted from me just say I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, brother. I mean, that was a good deployment. You were a great, great great guy, great leader out there. You did a great job, and I think that helps. Like not that I would take away from anybody, but I think you bond with people more that were really you could depend on out there, like you, Mike, and there was a bunch of others, but
Yeah.
But just the ones that come to the top of my head, like you never forget that you bond with that, like you appreciate that you were able to depend on somebody so much over there. Like they got this, I don't have to worry about it. They got it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, that good talk. Really appreciate all of you out there listening. I've had friends of mine reach out and say, hey, how come you don't talk about Afghanistan more? How come you don't talk about war more? And there's really no reason. Like we don't avoid it. It's not like we don't want to talk about it. It's just Mike and I said this on a podcast recently as a guest. Mike and I have been having these conversations, the things that we discuss for on the podcast. We've been talking about these things 5, 6, 7 years. So this isn't anything new. These are things that have always been top of mind for us. This growth mindset and always progressing forward. So don't think we're avoiding the military talk.
I think the reason why we've gotten away from the military talk is we didn't want to just pigeonhole this to one audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think
that's a good point.
But we did it. We did it so bad, so much that we've kind of neglected something we resonate with really well. So I think it's good that we came kind of back out. And if you guys want to hear more of it, please just reach out and
feel free to ask questions, comment. You can find us at Be the Standard Podcast on Instagram, Be the Standard Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble. And as always, we really appreciate your support, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Be the Standard.